Yo, what's going on everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, bringing you guys another Boruto 2 Blue Vortex discussion. Today, I think we need to take a very somber discussion on Matsuri's side quests that we learned about in the last manga chapter and why this might very well be a reason to start ringing the alarm bells right now when it comes to the Sand Village in particular, which is why in today's newest Naruto Explain video, which is being recorded before any of the spoilers and etc., I wanted to talk to you guys about why we need to get that bottle of liquor for the Sand Village and get those packs ready to smoke, only this time instead of that ugly haircut that Gaara has or the barber that lied to him and said that it looked good. We need to talk about why it makes sense and it would be good writing for there being a few bodies that have been dropped in the Sand Village and the village in general just undergoing some more trauma. So one of the biggest things that we have to take in consideration here is the fact that we had the reveal in the last chapter that while Hidari and Jura were inside of Konoha and they're carrying out their own side quests, and when Jura wasn't putting Kawaki to sleep, or he's showing Himawari that she wasn't really about that ninja life like Kurama was gassing up to believe that she was, or shooting Boruto from long distance with this Rinnegan sniper jutsu, and Hidari wasn't spending father-daughter time with Sarada or getting bullied by Boruto, we learned that Matsuri was out in the ninja world hunting down information in regards to Boruto discovering that he had an accomplice who was working alongside him. This is the line that kept nagging at the back of my mind this entire time because of how quickly it was passed by in the story and how it was hidden in the narrative, setting up the flashback of Boruto at Kashin Koji, which as I reread the chapter, I think this whole thing was intentional. The way that the chapter is structured, it was meant to have us focus specifically on the reveal of the 10 direction Shinjutsu and us having the reveal that Jura was having an even bigger monster that we needed to be worried about than ever before in terms of how he was being built up. However, there are two lines at that point that kind of put me in the direction of thinking the Sand Village was either in danger or it was on the precipice of danger itself. The first is when we had that line that Matsuri found out that Boruto had help. But the other line that stood out was Kashin Koji during the flashback reveals that he summoned Boruto to one of Orochimaru's old hideouts that was located in the Land of Wind for Matsuri to be able to determine with absolute certainty that Boruto had someone helping him. It means that she had to be somewhere in the vicinity of Kashin Koji's hideout. While there are always a few possibilities that Boruto and Kashin Koji, they could have just been moving through hideouts, I don't think that this is the case for a few reasons. The first is that we know Boruto and Koji were still operating out of one of Orochimaru's hideouts as recently as the battle of Boruto versus Mitsuki, because we see the snake torches on the wall and how they were using it as a base operations at that point in time. Based on the location in terms of the scenery, looks like this is the same area. There's not really anything that suggests that they would have been moving from location to location the way that Sasuke and Orochimaru did, only because doing so it has less incentives for them. Orochimaru moved that far because while like Boruto, who had multiple nations hunting him down as a rogue ninja as well as the Akatsuki, Orochimaru has been moving between hideouts because he had various test subjects and experiments going on at each hideout, so he had every incentive in the world to just keep moving instead of just staying hidden in one place. Boruto and Kashin Koji, they didn't have as much incentive for this reason. They were hiding in plain sight. While the idea of Boruto traveling alongside Sasuke, someone who was training under Orochimaru and operating as a rogue ninja for the last 3 years himself, the idea that Sasuke would use that as a location might have crossed the minds of people. It's important to look at this next point. It's called hiding in plain sight for a reason. Choosing a location like this, one of Orochimaru's old hideouts, is so obviously the wrong choice that it wouldn't be a choice that anyone would expect Sasuke to choose, because it goes back to the biggest problem at hand for the Five Nations. They know Sasuke and how calculating he is, and they know that going to a location like that would be the one thing he wouldn't do. Not when he spent the last decade plus traveling across the ninja world and having likely discovered multiple hiding places off the radar, like for a classic example, how he had operating bases outside the land of hot water for a time during the blank period. Someone like Sasuke was going back to Orochimaru's old hideout. That's the dumbest thing that they would ever expect him to do. which is why this whole move by Kashin Koji is so perfect. They cast their net so far out widely that they didn't even think to look in those locations. However, with these awakened Shinju, the fact that Matsuri is even looking in the way that she did, it means that either they had a way to track Boruto, hence the words about it not mattering where Boruto is going to hide because they would find him either way, or the interesting prospect, which is they likely have the benefit that the other nations don't have, which is that they have the benefit of not being clouded by prior experiences and knowledge. Whereas the other nations, they know Sasuke intimately and their memories of Boruto associate everything with Kawaki, with Boruto. We at least know that the awakened Shinju, they are newborns. They grasp information in a different manner. We don't know whether or not they know that Boruto and Kawaki aren't who they say they are, in terms of Kawaki saying that he's Naruto's son, but that's irrelevant. They'll eat either one of them. Most importantly, as we saw with Jura, who was shown reading dozens of books in the ninja world, while we don't know the contents, let alone how he even got hold of those books, what we do know is that he was in the process of gaining information, and he's able to process information and do so rather quickly, making that line about him being the leader of the Shinju hold more weight. Just looking at the chapter and the appearance of what it looks like as a Shinju version of Shinki, it does kind of stand to reason that if Matsuri is going to go out there on the hunt, this would be the place where her travels would take her, to the Sand Village or the Land of Wind, period. She wouldn't have found out about Kashin Koji just because of the genjutsu that was put in place there at the hideout that they're in, since I strongly doubt that Koji would have been hiding using genjutsu, knowing that the awakened Shinju were a possible threat, a likely threat because of 10 directions, and knowing that he needed to keep Boruto away from Jura and the Shinju. There's no reason he wouldn't have used it if there wasn't a guarantee that he saw that it will prove effective. However, if she's in that area and the ninjas from the Sand Village are out there looking for Boruto, like we saw ninjas from what appeared to either be the Stone or the Sand Village that were looking for Boruto, it stands to reason that she would bump into some of them at some point during her search. The idea of Gaara's adopted son Shinki would be out there amongst the Sand Village ninjas going through the Land of Wind is not that crazy of an idea. In every medium that we've had for the Boruto story, we've been told that Shinki is one of the elites of the Sand Village and he is a standout. The idea that he isn't out there assisting in the hunt for the killer of Naruto, the man who saved his adopted father Gaara from the darkness, is something that I find really hard to believe, which makes it all the more likely that Matsuri is likely mixed up in this at some point in the story. The biggest question is during this whole encounter, which seems to have happened based off of the appearance of the Shinki Shinju that we see in Kashin Koji's future vision, it does make you wonder, how far did this go? How far did she go? Going into the chapter, the prospect of a subversion of expectations, it needs to be on everyone's minds right now, because we're all going in thinking that Boruto's going to be interrogated and Sarda's going to be rocking the free Boruto t-shirt, and Boruto's looking at Kawaki in the face saying that he ain't a snitch, but if he is one, he would tell the whole world how Kawaki ain't shit and won't ever be anything except for the best number 2 when it comes to Naruto's favorite sons, because he is the only Uzumaki child. He's the OUC, which is why throwing in that report of the Shinju having pulled up to the Sand Village, particularly Matsuri, it makes sense. From the threat level and the heat that the Shinju would get, that would make it a lot harder for readers. It again places readers in that catch-up mode to try and figure out what happens next. And I think this ultimately might be for the better in that regard. One of the questions that people have asked is, why haven't we seen more of the other villages? While I personally don't take any issue with it, because I'm someone who's more familiar with Naruto's manga than anime, which in the manga, the story, it was mostly rooted in the Land of Fire. Like, there's 72 volumes, 73 counting Naruto Gaiden, and like for 60 of those volumes, we weren't even outside the Land of Fire, outside of a few things here or there, like the Kazekage rescue arc and Sasuke's brief excursions into the Land of Lightning, where he got bullied by Killer Bee, and the Land of Iron, where he got humbled by the Raikage. Outside of that, it was very Konoha centric until the final arc, which that's like the last, 53, volume 53s where Naruto meets Kushina, so like the war's taking place there. So like the last 20 volumes, that takes place across multiple countries for the 4th Ninja War. And even then, we ended up going right back into the Land of Fire for an entire manga volume and a half. So we couldn't even get out of Konoha. So I was never really tweaking over the whole lack of inclusion of the other ninja villages, particularly since the world building with them is already set. We know what we need to know about them. However, this would be a good way to say bring them in, and should the narrator choose to do so, it will be a nice change up because we've already established that Jura is going to be making an army of Shinju. We just have to ask the question of what the exact amount are. We know it's a great number, which reminder, the fan translation is wrong. It never said 400. The idea of Matsuri beating the brakes off of Gaara and shaving that ugly haircut of his and telling him to start over, regrow his hair, and consuming his son Shinki right in front of him. It's something that very well could work in this narrative, but at the same time, being blunt, I still think it's going to be a Konoha-centric story that we see with the shinobi that deal with them the same way that like the car inners and outers were mostly handled by Boruto's generation shinobi, because their targets, they're in the lane of fire. It just feels like this is going to be the same thing. Though with Boruto and Koji operating in the lane of wind, there's always a possibility that Gaara gets the opportunity to redeem himself, which would make for an amazing flashback, almost as amazing as this My Hero Academia video over here on the left, or this Naruto Explained video over on the right. So make sure to click whichever one you haven't seen, and remember, Shinju DNA is love, Shinju DNA is life.